Jake Harrison walked through the crystal halls of Viridian Prime with slow steps. His black shoes made no sound on the smooth floor. The alien building stretched high above him like a mountain made of glass. Light came through the walls in strange colors that hurt his human eyes. He carried a small briefcase and wore his best suit. Today was important. The meeting room was huge. The table in the center looked like it was cut from one giant black stone. It reflected the ceiling lights like a dark mirror. Around the table sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They came from dozens of different worlds. Some had scales. Some had crystal skin. Others looked like walking trees or floating gas. Clouds. Jake took his seat at the far end of the table. The chair was too big for him. His feet barely touched the floor. The other delegates looked at him for a moment, then turned away. They started talking to each other in their own languages. Jake understood most of what they said. Humans were good at learning languages. Chancellor Vexstar was the first to speak in common. His voice was deep and rough. He had 4 eyes that moved in different directions. His skin was green with black spots. We are here to discuss the new trade routes through Sector 7. The profits will be enormous, Trade Minister Quindle nodded. Her body was made of living crystal that changed colors when she moved. The shipping lanes will cut travel time by 40%. We can move goods faster than ever before. Jake raised his hand. Excuse me. Sector 7 includes 12 human colonies and the Sol system. We should talk about how this affects our people. The room went quiet. Then some of the aliens started to laugh. It was not a kind sound. Vexstar turned his 4 eyes toward Jake. Human, your species is very young. You have only been in space for 200 years. That is nothing. Some of us have been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. Your technology is simple, said Minister Quindle. Her crystal body flashed red with amusement. Your ships are slow, your weapons are basic. What could you possibly know about galactic trade? Jake opened his briefcase and took out a datapad. We know that your new routes will pass through our home system. The gravity effects from your hyperspace gates will destroy Earth's moon. That will kill everyone on the planet. High Arbiter Morgan was 12 feet tall with silver skin. He looked down at Jake like a parent looking at a small child. The route has been planned by our best scientists. If there are small problems, we will deal with them later. Small problems? Jake stood up. You are talking about the death of 8 billion people. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Vexstar said. Humanity is just one small species. The galactic economy is more important than your feelings. Jake looked around the table. 47 different species were represented here. Not one of them spoke up for humanity. They all nodded and agreed with Vexstar. Jake had spent 3 months preparing for this meeting. He had written reports. He had made charts and graphs. He had offered alternative routes that would work just as well. Did any of you read my proposal? Jake asked. We looked at it, Morgan said. Your ideas are interesting but not practical. You suggest routes that go around inhabited systems. That would add weeks to shipping times. It would save lives. Human lives, Quindle said. Why should we care about one primitive species when we can benefit the entire galaxy? Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had been polite for 3 days. He had followed all their rules. He had spoken when they allowed him to speak. He had waited his turn. None of it mattered. We are not asking for special treatment, Jake said. We are asking for the right to exist. And you can exist, Vexstar said. Just not where we need to build our trade routes. There are plenty of empty systems where humans can live. Those systems cannot support human life. Then perhaps your species will adapt. Evolution is a wonderful thing. More laughter filled the room. Jake realized that this was not a negotiation. It was not even a discussion. The decision had been made before he arrived. They had invited him here to tell him what would happen. Not to ask his opinion. We reject your proposal, Jake said clearly. Your rejection is noted, Morgan said. But it does not matter. The Galactic Trade Consortium has voted. The construction begins in 3 months. Jake closed his briefcase. He walked slowly toward the door. The aliens kept talking behind him, as if he had already left. They discussed construction schedules and profit margins. They talked about his people like they were rocks that needed to be moved out of the way. At the door, Jake stopped and turned around. The room was still full of laughter and conversation. These beings controlled thousands of worlds. They commanded fleets that could destroy stars. They had forgotten more about science and technology than humans had ever learned. Chancellor Vexstar, Jake said. His voice was calm and quiet. The laughter stopped. All eyes turned toward him. You said that humanity is young and primitive? You said we know nothing about galactic politics. You may be right about some of those things. Of course we are right, Vexstar said. But you're wrong about one thing. You think that being young means being weak. You think that being different means being inferior. Jake looked at each of them in turn. His brown eyes were steady and unblinking. You have made a choice today. You chose to ignore us. You chose to treat us like we do not matter. That is your right, but choices have consequences. Are you threatening us? Morgan asked. His silver skin darkened with anger. No, I am just telling you that this moment will be remembered. Your historians will write about what happened here today. They will want to know why you did what you did. Jake walked out of the room. Behind him, the laughter started again. It followed him down the crystal hallway. It echoed off the walls like the sound of breaking glass outside the building. Jake looked up at the strange purple sky of Viridian Prime. 3 moons hung in the afternoon light. Alien ships moved between them like silver dots. This was the center of galactic civilization. This was where the future was decided. Jake took out his communication device. He pressed a single button and waited. A voice answered after 2 seconds. This is Admiral Carter. Sam, this is Jake. They said no. I was afraid of that. How bad was it? They laughed at us, Sam. They think we are children playing with toys. Maybe that is for the best. Let them think that. Jake walked toward his ship. It was small and simple compared to the alien vessels around it. But it was fast and it was quiet and it would get him home. Any final orders? Admiral Carter asked. Jake stopped walking. He looked back at the crystal palace where the galaxy's future was being decided without humanity's voice. Send the message, Jake said. Which message? All of them. Captain Lisa Rodriguez checked her instruments for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The readings were still wrong. According to her sensors, there were no ships in the Tau Ceti system. Of her eyes told her a different story. Through the main window of her cargo ship, she could see dozens of massive alien vessels moving toward the inner planets. Pete, run the scanner again, she told her communications officer. Pete Johnson shook his head. Same result, Captain. The computer says space is empty. Lisa frowned. Her ship, the New Frontier, was not military. It was a simple cargo hauler that carried supplies between human colonies. But its sensors were good enough to detect large objects in space. The ships ahead of them were not small. Danny, what do you think? Lisa asked her navigator. Danny Walsh looked up from his station. Either our equipment is broken, or those ships are using some kind of stealth technology that hides them from sensors but not from human eyes. Why would they hide? From sensors but not from sight? Maybe they do not think we are worth hiding from. Lisa thought about that. It made sense. The alien ships were huge compared to her small vessel. They probably thought one human cargo ship could not threaten them. They were right about that. The New Frontier had no weapons. Its only defense was speed, and even that was not impressive by galactic standards. Open a channel to the lead ship, Lisa ordered. Pete worked at his controls. Channel open, Captain. Attention alien vessels. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the human cargo ship New Frontier. You are entering the Tau Ceti system without permission from the Colonial Authority. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came quickly. The main screen filled with the image of a being that looked like a giant lizard, wearing a military uniform. His scales were dark green with yellow markings around the eyes. His teeth were sharp and white. Human vessel. I am Fleet Commander Zarthel of the Hegemony Navy. We are here under the authority of the Galactic Trade Consortium. Your primitive species has no legitimate claim to this system. Lisa felt her anger rising. 3 human colonies orbited the star below them. Tau Ceti 3 had 15 million people. Tau Ceti 5 had 20 million. The mining stations around Tau Ceti 7 supported another 10 million workers and their families. Commander, this system has been home to human beings for over 60 years. We have cities, farms, schools, hospitals. 45 million people live here. That is not our concern, Zarthel said. His voice was cold and flat. We are here to build a hyperspace gate. Your people have 3 days to evacuate? 3 days? Commander, it would take months to evacuate that many people. And where would they go? These are their homes. Find somewhere else. The galaxy is large. Lisa looked at her crew. 8 faces stared back at her. They were good people. Hard workers who had families on the colonies below. Pete had a wife and 2 children on Tau Ceti 3. Danny's parents lived in the retirement community on Tau Ceti 5. Commander, the construction of a hyperspace gate this close to the star will destabilize the entire system. The planets will be thrown out of orbit. The star itself might go supernova. Our scientists have calculated the risks, acceptable losses. Acceptable? To who, not to the people who live here? Zarthel leaned forward. His image filled the screen. Human, you will move your ship out of our way, or we will move it for you. You have 10 minutes to comply. The transmission ended. Lisa stared at the blank screen for a moment. Then she turned to her crew. Well, people, what do you think? We should run, said her engineer, Carl Murphy. We cannot fight those ships. They could destroy us with one shot. Where would we run to? Asked Pete. Our families are down there. The colonies are starting to evacuate, said Danny. He was monitoring the local communication channels. But you are right, Captain. 3 days is not enough time. Lisa made her decision. Pete, open a channel to all human vessels and installations in the system. Use emergency frequency alpha. The channel open. Lisa took a deep breath. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez to all human forces in the Tau Ceti system. Code Prometheus, I repeat, Code Prometheus. This is not a drill. She closed the channel and turned to Danny. Set course for the outer system, maximum burn. Captain, what is Code Prometheus? Asked Pete. Lisa did not answer right away. She watched as the Hegemony fleet moved toward the inner planets. Behind them, she could see the evacuation beginning. Ships were launching from all 3 colonies. Some were passenger vessels, others were cargo haulers like her own. But scattered among them were ships that looked different. Ships that did not appear in any public registry. Code Prometheus is something we hoped we would never have to use. Lisa finally said. On the main screen, Commander Zarthel watched the human evacuation with satisfaction. The little ships scattered in all directions like insects running from light. Some headed for other star systems. Others moved toward the outer edge of Tau Ceti space. A few seemed to be heading into empty space with no destination at all. They run like cowards, Zarthel told his tactical officer. Begin construction of the hyperspace gate. The Hegemony fleet moved into position around the star. Massive construction ships began to deploy equipment. The hyperspace gate would take 2 days to build. When it was finished, ships could jump directly from the Hegemony core worlds to the outer rim territories. Travel time would be cut by weeks. The fact that building the gate would destroy the Tau Ceti system was irrelevant. The Hegemony had more important concerns than the survival of one primitive species. But as the construction began, strange things started to happen. Ships that had appeared to be fleeing suddenly changed course. Instead of jumping to other systems, they moved to specific coordinates in the outer system. More ships arrived from directions where sensors showed empty space. Zarthel noticed none of this. His attention was focused on the gate construction. The sooner it was finished, the sooner he could report success to his superiors. Meanwhile, on the edge of the system, Lisa Rodriguez watched the evacuation continue. Her crew had been silent for the past hour. They all understood what Code Prometheus meant, even if they had never heard it before. "Captain," Pete said quietly. "The last civilian transport just cleared the inner system." "Good. Any word from the colonies? All population centers are empty. The planetary governments have relocated to the emergency stations." Lisa nodded. The emergency stations were hidden bases built in the asteroid belts around each planet. They were supposed to be secret, but she suspected the hegemony would find them eventually. It did not matter. By then, it would be too late. "Danny, what is our position?" "We are at the rendezvous coordinates. 43 other vessels have joined us." 43? I count at least 100 ships on sensors. The others are not showing up on standard scans, Captain. Lisa smiled for the first time in hours. That is because they are not supposed to. On the main screen, the hegemony construction continued. The hyperspace gate was half finished. Zarthel was pleased with the progress. His engineers estimated another 18 hours until completion. He had no idea that every move his fleet made was being recorded and analyzed. He did not know that the fleeing human ships had not really fled. He certainly did not know that Code Prometheus was not an evacuation order. It was a declaration of war. In the outer system, ships that did not exist on any galactic registry powered up weapons that should not exist. Humans who were supposed to be primitive and helpless made final preparations for a battle that the galaxy would never forget. The hegemony had made the same mistake that every other species made when dealing with humans. They had assumed that being young meant being weak. They had confused kindness with cowardice. They had mistaken hope for naivety. They were about to learn the difference. Lisa Rodriguez opened one final channel to the hegemony fleet. Commander Zarthel appeared on her screen, looking annoyed at the interruption. "What do you want now, human?" "I wanted to give you one last chance to leave, Commander. Pack up your gate and go home." "No one has to die today," Zarthel laughed. "You are in no position to make threats, little human. Your evacuation is complete. You have nothing left to fight with. You are wrong about that. What could you possibly do to stop us?" Lisa looked at her crew one more time. They all nodded. They were ready. "You are about to find out." Station Commander Telvash had been monitoring deep space for 27 years. His Zentari deep space station orbited a dead star at the edge of human territory. Nothing interesting ever happened here. That was why he liked the assignment. It was quiet and peaceful. Today was different. His instruments were showing readings that made no sense. According to his sensors, massive structures were appearing throughout human space. Not ships, but installations the size of moons. The energy signatures were enormous. "This cannot be correct," Telvash muttered to himself. He ran a full diagnostic on his equipment. The results came back clean. His instruments were working perfectly. Telvash had been watching human space for decades. The intelligence reports were always the same. Humans had small colonies, simple technology, and a tiny fleet of basic warships. They were not considered a threat to anyone. Most galactic powers ignored them completely, but the readings on his screen showed something else entirely. Hundreds of massive installations were powering up simultaneously. The energy output was incredible. Some of the structures were generating more power than entire Zentari battle fleets. "Computer, when were these installations built?" Telvash asked, unable to determine construction date. "No previous sensor records exist for these structures. That was impossible." Telvash had been monitoring this region continuously. His stations sensors could detect large objects from several light years away. There was no way anyone could build installations this size without him noticing, unless they had been hidden somehow. Telvash was still trying to understand what he was seeing. When his proximity alarms activated, something large was approaching his station. He checked his sensors but saw nothing. The space around him appeared empty. Then a ship materialized out of nowhere. Telvash had never seen anything like it. The vessel was sleek and angular, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It was twice the size of his station and radiated power signatures that made his instruments scream warnings. The communication request came immediately. Telvash accepted it with shaking hands. The woman who appeared on his screen was human, but unlike any human he had seen before. She wore a black uniform with silver insignia that seemed to move and shift when he looked at them. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her green eyes were calm and confident. "Commander Telvash, I am Admiral Kate Morgan of the Terran Defense Force. I apologize for the sudden appearance. Our stealth systems can be startling." "Stealth systems?" Telvash's voice cracked. "Humans do not have stealth technology. We have many things that are not in the galactic databases, Commander. May I come aboard your station? We need to talk." Telvash looked at his tactical display. The human ship was close enough to destroy his station with ease. He had no choice but to agree. "You may dock at Port 7. Admiral Morgan arrived with 2 escorts. They all wore the same black uniforms with shifting silver insignia. Telvash met them at the airlock. Up close, Admiral Morgan was smaller than he expected. Humans were always smaller than Zentari. But there was something about her presence that made him nervous. "Thank you for receiving us, Commander," Admiral Morgan said. "I know this is unusual." "Unusual is an understatement. According to my sensors, your entire species just revealed military capabilities that should not exist." Admiral Morgan smiled. "Should not exist according to whom?" "According to every intelligence report I have read. Humans are supposed to be a primitive species with limited technology." "And you believe those reports?" Telvash hesitated. "Why should I not believe them?" "Because they were designed to be believed. We have spent 60 years making sure the galaxy sees exactly what we want them to see." Admiral Morgan walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum windows, her ship was visible. Against the stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Tell me, Commander, what do your sensors show when you scan human space now?" Telvash activated a portable scanner. The readings made him dizzy. Thousands of installations, millions of ships, energy readings that exceed anything in our databases. "And yesterday?" "Yesterday I saw nothing. Small colonies, a few patrol ships, some mining operations. What changed between yesterday and today?" "You stopped hiding." Admiral Morgan nodded. "We stopped hiding." "The question is, why do you think we were hiding in the first place?" Telvash thought about that. "Because you knew that if the galaxy discovered your true capabilities, they would see you as a threat." "Exactly, so we remained invisible. We let everyone believe we were weak and primitive. We played the role of the helpless younger species that needed protection from the big bad galaxy." "But why? Why pretend to be weak when you are strong?" "Admiral." Morgan turned away from the window. "Because strong species get attacked. Weak species get ignored. We preferred to be ignored. Until now. The Galactic Trade Consortium and their allies have forced our hand. They decided to destroy human colonies to build their trade routes. They murdered 45 million of our people in the Tau Ceti system." Telvash felt his breathing slow. The destruction of Tau Ceti had been reported as an unfortunate accident. The official story was that the human evacuation had failed due to their primitive technology. "That was not an accident, was it?" "No, Commander. It was genocide. And genocide triggers certain protocols in our defense planning." "What kind of protocols?" "The kind that end civilizations." Telvash looked at his scanner again. The numbers were still climbing. More installations were powering up. More ships were dropping their stealth fields. The human fleet was revealing itself across dozens of star systems. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough." That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. We have enough ships to do what needs to be done. Telvash walked to his communication console. His duty was clear. He needed to report this to Zentari Command immediately. The galaxy needed to know that humanity was not what it appeared to be. Admiral Morgan watched him without moving. "Commander, before you send that report, I want you to consider something." "What?" "Your government abstained from the consortium vote. You did not support the decision to destroy human colonies. That matters to us." Telvash paused with his hand over the transmit button. You are offering us a choice. I am offering you a chance to be on the right side of history. The hegemony and their allies started this war when they committed genocide against human civilians. They will face the consequences of that decision. But your people do not have to face those consequences with them? What are you asking me to do? Power down your transmitters. Let my people escort you to safety. Sit out the next few days while we settle this matter with the parties responsible. And if I refuse, Admiral Morgan's smile was cold, then you will be treated as a hostile intelligence asset and dealt with accordingly. Telvash looked at his instruments one more time. The scale of what he was seeing was beyond anything he had imagined possible. Humanity had not just hidden a few ships and bases. They had hidden an entire military infrastructure that spanned multiple star systems. How long have you been preparing for this? Since the day we achieved faster-than-light travel, we knew that someday someone would decide we did not deserve to exist. We just made sure we would be ready when that day came. All of this just to fight one war? Not to fight one war, Commander, to end all wars? When this is over, no species will ever again make the mistake of underestimating humanity. No government will ever again decide that genocide is an acceptable solution to their problems. Telvash thought about his career. 27 years of watching empty space. 27 years of filing reports about human weakness and primitive technology. All of it had been a lie. Not a lie told by humans, but a lie that everyone else had chosen. To believe the intelligence reports, he said slowly. They were accurate, were they not? Humans do have small colonies and simple patrol ships. Yes. But that was only part of the truth. The part we wanted you to see. What about the rest? Admiral Morgan gestured toward the window. The rest has been waiting in dark space for 60 years, waiting for someone to give us a reason to come out of the shadows. Telvash made his decision. He powered down his transmitters and stepped away from the communication console. What happens now? Now we finish what the consortium started. But do not worry, Commander, this will not take long. Outside the station, more human ships were decloaking. Telvash counted dozens, then hundreds, then stopped counting altogether. The fleet stretched as far as his sensors could reach. Admiral Morgan, yes, Commander? Were you ever really primitive? Admiral Morgan's smile was genuinely warm for the first time since she had arrived. Commander, humans have been waging war for 10,000 years. We have fought with sticks and stones, with swords and spears, with bullets and bombs, with lasers and plasma. We have fought on every continent of our world and in the vacuum of space. We have never, not once in our entire history, been primitive when it comes to war. Then why did everyone believe you were? Because they wanted to believe it. Because it made them feel superior. Because the truth was too frightening to consider. Telvash watched the human fleet move past his station. The ships were silent and deadly, like predators stalking prey in the darkness. What is the truth, Admiral? Fleet Admiral Zarthal was having a good day. His 6th Fleet had just finished destroying 2 more human colonies without losing a single ship. The humans had fought back, of course, but their resistance was pathetic. A few patrol boats and some mining vessels armed with improvised weapons. Nothing that could threaten a proper military force. Navigation, set course for the next target, Zarthal ordered from his command chair. The humans have a research station in the Kepler system. Intelligence says it has no military value, but orders are orders. Course plotted, Admiral. His navigator replied, "Jump when ready." The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Zarthal expected to see the usual collection of small human installations and a token defense force. Instead, his sensors showed empty space. Tactical, where is the research station? Unknown, Admiral. Sensors show no artificial structures in the system. Zarthal frowned. Run a deep scan. The humans might be hiding behind one of the gas giants. Deep scan initiated. Admiral, I am detecting unusual energy readings throughout the system. What kind of energy readings? Before his tactical officer could answer, space around the hegemony fleet began to change. Ships materialized out of nowhere. Not the small patrol boats they had been fighting, but massive warships that dwarfed even Zarthel's flagship. "Red alert!" Zarthel shouted. "All ships, battle stations!" His communications officer looked up from her station with fear in her eyes. "Admiral, I count over 300 enemy vessels. They are not broadcasting any identification codes." 300? Zarthel could not believe what he was hearing. The humans do not have 300 warships. They barely have 30 ships in their entire fleet. "Sir, these are not the ships we have been fighting. These are completely different. Designs, the energy signatures are off the charts. On the main screen, the human fleet formed a perfect sphere around the hegemony ships. The formation was precise and coordinated. This was not a ragtag collection of civilian vessels. This was a professional military force. Open a channel to the lead ship," Zarthel ordered. "Channel open, Admiral." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to a human female. She wore a black uniform with silver insignia that seemed to move in the light. Her expression was calm and cold. "I am Admiral Kate Morgan of the Terran Defense Force. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to galactic conventions," Zarthel laughed. "Human, you are bluffing. Your species does not have the technology to build ships like these." "We have many technologies that do not appear in your intelligence reports, Admiral. This is your only warning. Surrender or be destroyed. I have 47 warships under my command. You cannot possibly have enough firepower to threaten a fleet this size." Admiral Morgan's smile was like ice. "Would you like to test that theory?" Zarthel cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Fire on the nearest human ship. Show them what real weapons can do." The hegemony flagship opened fire with its main batteries. Particle beams and plasma bolts struck the human vessel dead center. The alien weapons should have torn through any shield system known to galactic science. Instead, the human ship absorbed the attack without even slowing down. "Impossible," Zarthel whispered. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "that ship is not even showing shield fluctuations. It is like our weapons had no effect at all. Increase power to maximum. All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel." 47 hegemony warships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the human ship lit up with energy discharges. Any known vessel should have been vaporized instantly. The human ship remained undamaged. "Admiral," his communications officer said in a shaking voice, "the human commander is hailing us again." Admiral Morgan appeared on the screen. She looked disappointed rather than angry. "That was foolish, Admiral Zarthel. You have just demonstrated hostile intent against Terran Defense Force vessels. The rules of engagement have changed." "What are you talking about? Your ships are not even scratched? How is that possible? Our defensive systems are somewhat more advanced than your intelligence report suggested. Now, since you have chosen to open fire, I am authorized to respond with appropriate force." The human fleet moved with perfect coordination. In less than 10 seconds, every hegemony ship found itself targeted by multiple human vessels. The formation that had surrounded them tightened like a closing fist. "Admiral," his tactical officer said urgently, "they have targeting locks on all of our ships. I am reading massive power buildups in their weapon systems. Return fire. All ships, full attack pattern." But before the hegemony fleet could respond, the human ships opened fire. Zarthel had been in space combat for 30 years. He had seen plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles, and antimatter torpedoes. He thought he knew what ship-to-ship combat looked like. He was wrong. The human weapons were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Beams of pure energy that seemed to bend space itself. Projectiles that appeared solid but passed through shields, like they were not there. Missiles that split into hundreds of smaller warheads, each one guided by its own artificial intelligence. The hegemony ships began dying immediately. "Shield generators are offline," his tactical officer reported. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Around them, other hegemony vessels were suffering the same fate. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being torn apart like paper targets. How many ships have we lost? Zarthil demanded. 15 destroyed, 23 disabled. Admiral, we need to retreat. All ships jump to hyperspace. Emergency. Protocols. But when his navigator tried to engage the hyperdrive, nothing happened. Jump drive is not responding, Admiral. Something is interfering with our hyperspace field generators. The humans are jamming us? Admiral Morgan's voice came over the open channel. No point in trying to run, Admiral. We have deployed hyperspace interdiction fields throughout the system. No ship can jump to FTL while those fields are active. Zarthil looked at his tactical display. More than half of his fleet was gone. The remaining ships were damaged and defenseless. The human vessels had not taken so much as a scratch. This is impossible. No species has this level of technology. Where did you get these ships? We built them, Admiral. We have been building them for 60 years while the galaxy dismissed us as primitives. 60 years? But your species only achieved FTL travel 65 years ago? That is correct. We started planning for this war 5 years after we reached the stars. Zarthil felt something cold settle in his stomach. You planned for this war? We planned for the day when someone would decide that humanity did not deserve to exist. We knew it would happen eventually. The galaxy is full of species that solve their problems with genocide. We are not committing genocide. We are establishing trade routes. You destroyed 3 human colonies. You murdered 45 million civilians. You did this to make shipping lanes more convenient. What would you call that? Zarthil had no answer. The destruction of the human colonies had been presented to him as a military necessity. The humans were interfering with galactic commerce. They had been warned to evacuate and chose not to comply, but looking at it from the human perspective, he could see how it might look different. Admiral, his communications officer interrupted, I am receiving reports from across hegemony space. Our fleets in the Rigel sector have been destroyed. The Third Fleet at Procyon is under attack. Command is reporting human ships in orbit around our core worlds. All of them? At the same time? Yes, Admiral. It appears the humans have launched a coordinated assault on all hegemony military assets simultaneously. Zarthil looked at the human ships surrounding his dying fleet. How many ships do you have? Enough, Admiral Morgan replied. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you will get. Admiral Zarthil, I am offering you one final chance. Surrender your remaining ships, and I will guarantee the safety of your crews. And if I refuse, then you will share the fate of the colonies you destroyed. Zarthil looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him with hope and fear in their eyes. They were soldiers, but they were also people with families and lives they wanted to return to. If I surrender, what happens to the hegemony? The hegemony as a political entity will cease to exist. Your core worlds will be placed under Terran administration until a new government can be established. All military forces will be disbanded. All weapons of mass destruction will be destroyed. You are talking about the conquest of our entire civilization? I am talking about the consequences of genocide, Admiral. Your government chose this path when they decided that human lives did not matter. Now they will face the results of that choice. Zarthil closed his eyes. Around him, his flagship was dying. His fleet was destroyed. His civilization was being conquered by a species that everyone had dismissed as harmless primitives. How? He asked quietly. How what? How did we get it so wrong? How did an entire galaxy fail to see what you really were? Admiral Morgan's expression softened slightly. Because you saw what you wanted to see, Admiral. You needed to believe that you were superior to us. It made you feel better about yourselves. The truth was too frightening to consider. What truth? That humans have been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars. 1 year had passed since the war ended. Jake Harrison walked through the same crystal halls of Viridian Prime, but everything felt different now. The alien delegates who passed him in the corridors nodded respectfully. Some even stopped to speak. With him, the change was remarkable. The meeting room looked the same. The black stone table still reflected the ceiling lights like a dark mirror. But the seating arrangement had changed completely. Jake now sat at the head of the table where High Arbiter Morgan used to sit. The human delegation occupied the positions of honor, while the alien representatives sat as petitioners. It was a strange feeling. Jake had never wanted power over other species. He had only wanted humanity to be treated with respect. But sometimes respect had to be earned through strength rather than words. Chancellor Vextar entered the room with careful steps. The proud hegemony leader from a year ago was gone. In his place sat a broken being who spoke in quiet tones and avoided eye contact. The hegemony itself no longer existed. What remained was called the Hegemony Remnant, a collection of worlds under human supervision. Ambassador Harrison, Vextar said as he took his seat, my people wish to discuss the possibility of cultural exchange programs with humanity. Jake considered the request. Cultural exchange can be valuable, Chancellor, but it requires mutual respect and understanding. Those qualities were notably absent from our previous interactions. We understand that now, Ambassador. We have learned from our mistakes. Jake looked around the table. 47 species were represented, but the composition had changed dramatically. Some governments had been dissolved entirely. Others had been reorganized under new leadership. A few, like the Zentari and the Crystalline Republics, had survived by choosing neutrality during the war. Trade Representative Chun Liu from the Centauri Colonial Authority raised one of her 4 hands. She was one of the few alien leaders who had opposed the original consortium vote. Her government had even offered assistance to humanity during the crisis. If I may, Ambassador Harrison, I believe the real lesson here is not about military capabilities. It is about the danger of dismissing any species as inferior or irrelevant. Exactly right, Representative Chun, Jake replied. Humanity spent 60 years preparing for this day because we learned from our own history. We knew that eventually someone would decide we did not matter. Administrator Quindle from the reformed Crystal Territories leaned forward. She had been Trade Minister Quindle during the original crisis, but her government had fallen when the human fleets arrived. Now she served as an administrator under human oversight. Ambassador, our intelligence services estimate that your hidden fleet numbered in the millions of vessels. How long were you preparing for this conflict? We started the day we achieved faster than light travel, Jake answered honestly. Every human colony was built with dual purposes: civilian development and military logistics. Every trade route was mapped for strategic value. Every diplomatic contact was assessed for potential threat levels. Former Chancellor Vextar looked horrified. You were planning for war from the beginning? We were planning for survival, Jake corrected. There is a difference. Humanity has a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We hoped for peaceful coexistence. We prepared for the alternative. Admiral Sam Carter entered the room and took his seat beside Jake. He now served as Director of Galactic Security, a position that had not existed before the war. His job was to ensure that no species ever again made the mistake of attempting genocide as a solution to political problems. The tragedy, Admiral Carter said quietly, is that this war was completely unnecessary. We offered partnership, cooperation, mutual benefit. We asked only for basic respect and the right to exist unmolested. Instead, Jake continued, you chose to see us as primitives to be swept aside. You laughed at our diplomatic efforts. You ignored our warnings. You murdered our people to make your shipping lanes more convenient. The room fell silent. Every being present understood that they were witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic power. For thousands of years, the older species had ruled through a combination of advanced technology and assumed superiority. That age was over. Representative Chun spoke again. So what happens now, Ambassador? Humanity has proven its strength. What will you do with that power? Jake had been asked this question many times over the past year. The answer never changed. We will do what we always intended to do. We will build a galaxy where every species has the right to exist, to grow, to thrive. Where strength serves? Justice, not ambition. Where no one makes the mistake of undervaluing anyone else ever again. A new voice spoke from the back of the room. And how do we know you will not become the same kind of oppressors you fought against? Jake looked toward the speaker. It was Minister Rolthuk from the Outer Rim Coalition, a small alliance of species that had remained neutral during the war. His question was fair and important. Because our history teaches us what happens when power is used for oppression rather than protection, Jake replied. We have seen what happens when the strong prey upon the weak. We will not repeat those mistakes, but you have the power to do so. What stops you? Admiral Carter answered. The same thing that stopped us from revealing our true capabilities for 60 years. The knowledge that power without restraint leads to corruption. We have spent decades learning how to be strong without becoming monsters. And if we do not trust you, Jake smiled, then you are free to prepare for the day when you might need to stop us. We will not make the mistake of dismissing other species as harmless just because they appear weak. That was the era that destroyed the hegemony. Administrator Quindle asked, Are you saying you expect other species to arm themselves against humanity? We are saying that a galaxy where every species is prepared to defend itself is a galaxy where no one will be tempted to commit genocide for convenience, Admiral Carter explained. Mutual assured destruction may not be pretty, but it keeps everyone honest. Former Chancellor Vextar spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. How many ships do you really have? Jake exchanged a look with Admiral Carter. This question had been asked repeatedly over the past year. The answer was always the same. Enough. Enough for what? Enough to ensure that what happened to our colonies never happens to anyone else. Enough to guarantee that disputes are settled through negotiation rather than extermination. Enough to keep the peace. Representative Chun asked the question that everyone was thinking. Will you ever tell us the true size of your military? Probably not, Jake admitted. The uncertainty serves a useful purpose. As long as no one knows exactly how strong we are, no one will be tempted to test us. The meeting continued for several hours. Trade agreements were discussed. Territorial boundaries were negotiated. Cultural programs were planned. It was the kind of productive diplomacy that should have happened a year ago, before 45. Million people died. As the session ended, Jake remained seated while the other delegates filed out. Admiral Carter stayed as well. Do you think they have learned their lesson? Carter asked. Some of them have, others are just afraid. Fear can be as effective as understanding, at least in the short term. And in the long term? Jake looked out through the crystal walls at the alien city beyond. Zentari and crystalline beings walked alongside humans in the streets below. Children of different species played together in the parks. It was not perfect, but it was a beginning. In the long term, we hope they will learn to see us as partners rather than threats. But if they do not, we will be ready. Always, always. That is the price of peace in a dangerous galaxy. Constant vigilance and the strength to back it up. Carter nodded. Do you ever regret it? The way things turned out? Jake thought about that question. 45 million people were dead because the galaxy had underestimated humanity. Entire civilizations had been reorganized or destroyed. The balance of power had shifted permanently. I regret that it was necessary, he said finally, but I do not regret the outcome. Our children will grow up in a galaxy where no one will dismiss them as primitive or irrelevant. That is worth the price we paid. Outside the Crystal Palace, human patrol ships maintained their silent watch over Viridian Prime in the distance. The massive installations of the Terran Defense Force reminded everyone that the galaxy had changed forever. The age of dismissing humanity as a primitive species was over. The age of mutual respect had begun, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, human shipyards continued their work. Because the galaxy was still dangerous, and there was no such thing as being too prepared. The other species had undervalued humans one final time. As Jake had warned them a year ago, There had been no one left to warn them what that really meant. Now they knew, and they would never forget.